Good afternoon. Welcome to Perspectives Live. I'm excited about our guests today. We've got a great show in store for you. We have Carlos Fernandez, the Talent Acquisition Manager of Houston Methodist, based in Houston, Texas. Just over 25,000 employees, so a pretty big system. We want to definitely tap your brain, Carlos, today. Get your thoughts on where we are in healthcare, HR, and beyond. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Rollins, for having me. This is exciting and appreciate the invite.
Awesome. Yeah, you're one of those brave souls. I appreciate all those who are trying something new, and you're one of those guys who are just always forward thinking, trying new things. I appreciate that about you. So yeah, I really appreciate it. So I want to kind of get into, first of all, give our viewers an opportunity just to get to know you as a person. So if you could kind of tell us what kind of got you into healthcare and HR space. What kind of got you to the point you're in now?
Sure. Well, I mean, backing up way back when, I come from a family of healthcare. So, our father was a physician, sister's an RN, several other family members, and somewhere along the healthcare space. So, always had that inclination to drive towards, that delivery of patient care in some form. And so, early on in, when I was in, academic school, it really was about potentially going the psychology route. And, I really, as I started really getting to know my pursuits, my passions, healthcare was that calling. As I was attaining my bachelor's, went that route, bachelor of psychology route, and then, really saw that the MBA route was my career path. So that was my calling, and first entry into HR was really around training and development, learning and development. Joined a consulting company that partnered in various different industries. It was shortly into that literally ran into a colleague while I was at the gym, and he recruited me to join a recruitment agency. And so that's where I cut my teeth on agency recruitment, full desk, working with external clients, working with internal candidates, pursuing those different opportunities within IT, within finance, and gained some great experience from that standpoint. And it was one of my clients at that point. They didn't do a whole lot of business with me, but they did recruit me to join their internal team to lead their corporate recruitment, and then later their training and development. So joined that group for some time while I was working on my MBA, and it was shortly thereafter that I landed with Methodist. This was nearly 10 years ago. That now I've been. This is celebrating my 10 years with the organization, and I've been fortunate to be part of some exciting things that we do here.
Hey, well, congratulations on 10 years. That's awesome. Now, I didn't
Appreciate that.
know that yeah, no problem. So I didn't know that you were a third-party recruiter at one point in your life. That's where I cut my teeth in this business. So you used a term that maybe a lot of folks aren't familiar with unless they were third-party recruiters. You mentioned working a full desk. Can you explain to our viewers what does it mean to work a full desk?
Sure. Really, it's about those recs directly. Building that book of business with external clients, and getting to know those external clients, right? And understanding what makes those requisitions work, while at the same time you're finding the right candidates for those roles. So it's advantageous because you see it through their eyes, in a sense. If you build those right relationships, you can really understand their needs, and then at the same time match up those needs to the folks, that the talent that you're meeting with and connecting with, and really building that relationship. So that really boils down to it, versus a one-to-one relationship. You have business development folks that are fully dedicated to client business, and then you have full-time recruiters that are building and only focusing on those candidates. So from that standpoint, that's kind of the basis of that full desk environment.
Nicely done. Yeah, I was in that world too. I was a full desk recruiter for quite a few many years before starting this business. So yeah, we have a similar background in that way. Now let's talk about once you joined Houston Methodist. You did not join initially in the role you're in now, correct? Or did you?
No, correct. I was primarily on the corporate recruitment side. It's just interesting timing, very fortunate timing, as I was exposed to our growth when we were ramping up towards our ERP. So, we were ramping up. We had a legacy system. We were really building up that business case to implement a new ERP that would be one-stop shop for finance, accounting, supply chain, HR certainly, and for us in the HR side of the house, our ATS, our benefits, our full HR, access. And so as we were growing in that space, I had the opportunity to work with some great leaders around staffing for that project team. So staffing those consultant roles, those project-based roles, and really then at a later stage, transition more into that user test acceptance, working with our HR leadership in, that SME relationship from an ATS perspective.
So there were a lot of several other recruiters, I'm sure, that were in the same role as you, but for whatever reason, you made it to a leadership role, right? You're in management now. For those who are in the recruitment role that would like to get into management, what's some of the advice you would like to give to some of those people to maybe help them take that next step and reach the next level?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think first and foremost, leaders come in all shapes and sizes, and whether it's by title or by role, you can be a leader and be an individual contributor. I think that's the key part of it. And so if that's an interest of whoever out there that's looking for that growth and trajectory, I think it's the mindset of you leading the role that you're in, right? So if you're a full desk recruiter, you're leading those client relationships, you're leading those candidate relationships, and then also communicating that interest to your own leadership. And that's, I think, goes back to the relationship that you build with your superiors and your organization to let them know that that's an interest of yours, to be able to really get those opportunities to grow within your existing role, and then prepare you to that next role that you might take on.
That's good advice. I want to ask you another question. It's kind of related to the earlier thing you mentioned, you're on the third party side now. You've been internally for many years now. What are some of the differences that you saw in terms of the role or the responsibility of a recruiter working third party versus now working internally with just one client, which is your employer? Let's talk about that for a minute. What are some of the differences you've seen?
Yeah, I love that question. It's funny that I really kind of put some attention to hiring agency recruiters myself, and I feel that experience, that environment, really it transfers very well in a corporate environment because of just that methodology, that process, the infrastructure, that hitting the pavement with X amount of calls per day, and those really core milestones that you're looking to achieve, X amount of hires per week, X amount of calls, interviews per week. That backbone, then transitioning that into a corporate role plays very well because you're already into those metrics. You got to hit your calls, you got to hit your goals, you got to hit X amount of hires. You just, in some cases, we don't have a quota system. We don't have a, particular, let's say, bonus structure that we got to hit from that perspective that you do in an agency, but you still got to hit those milestones in different ways. So I think from that standpoint, that's very conducive. So there's some similarities in a sense of, though it's one client, one organization, there's different departments that their environment can be very specific to that leader or that business that they're running. For example, your finance department might work a little bit different than your IT department or your supply chain department. And so, working under that leader, getting to know, what type of behavioral skills, what type of functional skills they're looking for outside of just the job description. You can really apply that, and even again, going back to, you have one organization, one culture, one values, but at the same time, you have those intricacies between the departments. In a sense, you have one client, but in a sense, there are some variances between those.
Yeah, I see your point. It makes sense. So in a sense, it is like you do have several clients because different leaders, maybe they want different things or looking for different things and have different needs and wants. So that does make sense. It's like you have another client, even though, like you said, they share the same culture and values.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let me ask you this: in terms of the internal, what are some things you enjoy more about the internal that you didn't like as much when you were in third party, if you don't mind? Like, where's some of the positives you've seen as you moved over that you're like, wow, I didn't know it was like this. I like this way better. Maybe you can talk to that for a moment.
Yeah, certainly. Well, I think there's certainly some benefits, pros and cons on both sides. I think, I think it boils down to, building your career, building, through one organization. You're vested within that organization. You can really grow your career in that space. And I have still some really good friends I stay in contact with, former colleagues that I stay in contact with that are, highly vested in the agency recruitment side. And, that's where they really continued their career. So I think for me personally, I kind of felt an inclination to transition more on the corporate side just because of the nature of seeing it through. So after you are recruiting that talent, then you can, see that continuation of that talent then develop throughout the rest of their own career, and that's where you're bringing talent in the door, but then you're involved with their own development and growth, and you certainly are part of that as well. So I think that's the variance for me. On the flip side, on an agency side, yes, you're built on recs and you work with various different organizations, but there is a little bit of that linear relationship when you take on, okay, I'm moving on from this other set of recs now, and other clients that I'm working with. So I think it's just a preference on my part, but like I said, I have several contacts, friends that have gone that route, stayed with that route, and they've been very successful through it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and of course, and I've spoke to several on the third party side. They just really love that side of the business, being working strictly with external clients. So, like you said, it's really kind of more of a personal choice. I want to invite any who are watching. If you have questions and you want to tap into the brain, someone like Carlos has got tons of experience, really on both sides. More so now on the corporate side with a very large health organization. I invite you to chime in with any questions you have. We'll try to address those questions throughout our interview. All right, so I want to move on to something else too. I've noticed about you quite a bit of volunteer work. Quite a bit of work in the community, directly related to your industry. The first thing I'd like to ask is, what are some of the things you're involved in right now?
Yeah, sure. So I'll have this shameless plug that thank you to you. I've been involved with 3HRA and the local ASHA chapter, and been really excited about our continued growth here locally. It's the Healthcare HR Association. That we get the opportunity to partner with fellows like Rollis and other great leaders here, with the Texas Medical Center and healthcare industry. So, I've been super excited about that partnership, and really what I enjoy about it is really comparing notes and really learning about successes that other organizations are, what's performing well for them, what are some of the similar challenges that we're all having, and how can we collaborate. So that's been super exciting. I'm also, through our organization, partner with the Texas Medical Center, the Hiring Red, White, and You initiative, and that's a collaboration that we partner with the fellow hospitals here locally to hire veterans. So that's the big emphasis for us, certainly as a nation. We're focused on here locally. How can we continue to drive awareness from that standpoint? And really collaborate on different events and initiatives as well. So that's the big push for us. And one of the things that I enjoy about that is really just, again, learning from other professionals, other leaders, because in some cases it's exciting to see what is working well within your organization. But I think to be able to talk to other organizations, that's where you really kind of understand your benchmarks, learn from them. There's the interesting thing is we're not on the same path, right? We don't all share the same goals, but at the same time, we may be at different phases in that development, and that's where we, understanding kind of where others are, that they may be excelling, outside of what we're doing. There's some great takeaways from that.
No, that's a great point. Now, I've so appreciated having you on our board. You're actually one of our board members that helped lead the H3RA. So you've been very instrumental in helping us there, as well as with our conferences. We've had 2 conferences so far, and you've been on both of them. And appreciated having your insight on those conferences as well. So thank you for that.
My pleasure.
Where do you see this going in 2020? The work that we're doing in 2020, where do you see the work with the Healthcare HR Association? And maybe you can give some encouragement to those who maybe they aren't in our area, that perhaps are in other areas throughout the United States. If you have any advice for what they should be doing in terms of getting involved with volunteer service within the healthcare or HR space.
Yeah, I think, being in Houston, it allows us to kind of drive into different industries. So I think, from that standpoint, it's definitely the folks that are already in healthcare in some way or fashion, but it's also the other industries is, what is working well, especially from tech. We're all learning from, innovation and technology right now. And, how can the successes in that industry play into healthcare. And certainly, we're looking to drive results on the patient care side and, patient delivery side. And how can we incorporate some of those lessons learned? So I think, locally, but certainly, across the country, we're all looking at, what industries are performing well, and then, economically, how does that play into, incorporating some of those results within healthcare. So, I think within our chapter here locally, I think we have an opportunity to really cater to those non-industry professionals as well.
Okay. Now, in terms of I noticed you mentioned the red, white, and blue. What is the main focus of that particular organization, and what progress have you seen so far in working with them?
Yeah. And sorry, I gotta make an update there. It's Hiring Red, White, and You is the organization.
Oh, sorry. Red, white, and You.
That's okay. But from that standpoint, it's a partnership certainly with the hospitals, but it's also the veteran service organizations, the VSOs. VSOs are the front lines. Those are the organizations that are really paving the path forward for the career development standpoint for veterans as they're outplaced. Whether they're early stage or, they've been in the workforce for many years, they're that backbone that, they're the coaches at the front line around resume prep, interview prep, career development, and then preparing those veterans to then, have those interviews, land those opportunities with organizations like, us within the Texas Medical Center. So they're a key part of that. And then, come the hospitals that have the open requisitions, and then we can, talk more formally about those roles. So, we have actually our hiring event coming up in May. We're still working out the finalized date, but we'll certainly love to plug that once we have a date lined up. We'd love to have, any veterans that are open to attend. We historically do that in close proximity to the Med Center, and have the opportunity to have those veteran service organizations in attendance. So veterans that are wanting that support, the career development from their standpoint, but also, meet with employers. Certainly our organization is heavily involved, meet from our recruitment teams and learn about opportunities within our organizations as well.
I love that you mentioned hiring events. Let's talk about that, because I know that different organizations use hiring events in different ways. Let's talk about, first of all, the live hiring events where folks are coming to your location, wherever you are, and you're giving this hiring event. What kind of goes into that? Tell us about the preparation and then what's your expectations and how has that worked out recently? Have you seen any changes over the past 10 years as to how effective those hiring events are? I'd love to hear some of your comments on that.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think it's interesting because with the advancements in technology now, it's not it doesn't require to be a physical event, right? You have access now to connect virtually with folks, um, connect with recruiters, connect with hiring leaders, in that space, whether it's through some web chat like this type of platform, or some other type of forum, or the on-site. Certainly, and we do not discriminate, right? We're multifaceted, so we want to meet the candidates where they are. So some candidates, want to be face to face. Let me shake your hand, Wallace, and get to know you. Others, hey, let me talk to this employer through my phone, my mobile, and have dialogue. Let me learn more about my my potential career path, and what this employer will mean for me, right? But on-site hiring events, certainly, we have several throughout the year. One of our campuses just had their event last week. We actually had three last week. One particular at one of our campus, or excuse me, close proximity to our campus. Over 700 attendees. They're still going through all the numbers and hires that they've had from it, but very successful. We hosted two smaller scale events, but really got to meet some great candidates out of it, and really put that attention to our growing needs across the the greater Houston area. So to answer your question, I think really it boils down to getting our recruiters in places throughout the greater Houston area, putting our brand out there, getting a chance to meet great candidates, in various different specialties. And then the follow-up is really the big part of it, is how we as an employer can reconnect with those folks, whether they were able to attend the hiring event or not. Certainly there's a lot of great, exciting opportunities that we have here that, we can consider them for. And so, we try to be very multifaceted about how we connect with candidates.
I love how you mentioned that about, it's important with the follow up, even those who can't come. I would like you to speak to maybe some successes or some things that you do as a practice for those who aren't going to be able to make the event. What efforts are you taking towards those, and has it turned into hires on some occasions by doing that?
Yeah. So a couple ways we do that is through like an online registration portal. Folks can express their interests, register for, whether it's nursing opportunities, allied health, corporate opportunities if we're hiring in that space. And then, again, whether say the event's tomorrow, they're not able to attend, at the aftermath of that, in saying, okay, John Smith, we weren't able to meet you, or we unfortunately weren't able to meet you, at said date, but we'd still love to learn more about your experience here. Please consider whether it's our career site or a online portal for you to really express your interest, and then let's have a conversation for targeted needs. So from that standpoint, it's timeliness, and it's also targeted to the need that the individual expressed their interest under.
Yes, absolutely. Now, you said you had roughly about 700 people at these three events or so. What types of roles were they looking to get? Like, what types of roles were being advertised, and were they being considered for? If you can kind of help us with that as well.
Yeah, sure. Well, the one last week was actually for all skill sets. So one of our community hospitals hosted that, and so that as an example. But in many cases, when we host events, they're very targeted to specific needs, whether they're nursing, allied health, corporate roles. So we work in a fashion to really make it very specific, so the candidate can opt in or opt out, right? If I'm a HR professional, they're certainly focused on nursing. I might decide, okay, well let me await a corporate recruitment event for me to space that aligns to my career path.
Mm-hmm. Now, are you finding that for some types of roles, let's say for registered nurses or for techs, that you're finding that maybe the online is working better than the in person, or conversely, on let's say that more of the non-clinical roles, that the hiring events are perhaps just as much, if not more effective than the online? Maybe you could talk to the differences and what's been working better recently.
Yeah, I think we haven't found like that silver bullet, and I don't think that silver bullet exists. I think for us, it's really taking a multifaceted approach so that we're dedicating X amount for the online, X amount for the in-person, and then, really kind of tightening up that based on the market shift. Certainly now, January timeframe, we're kind of rolling into February. It's prime time, right? Holidays have passed. People took time off, year-end bonuses. People are back and ready on the saddle for the next role. So how do we differentiate ourselves from other employers, and then at the same time, really again going back to meeting the candidate where they are. How do we facilitate that connection quicker and more efficiently, and not rest on our laurels. Certainly, for us, hiring season is this is the peak of hiring season, probably first quarter, rolling into the summertime, and then once we get in the holidays, we're back in kind of a more preparation for the following year. So, and certainly that shifts based on needs, new openings, new expansions, and so there's variability throughout the year. And then, certainly as needs grow throughout the year as well, that creates some different variability. But I guess going back to your question, I think we approach that on what our strategy is, and then match up based on the trends that we see and what that data is telling us and what's working well for us.
It's interesting you mentioned that about how January we're in that hiring season. We took the whole year of 2019 and we looked at specifically for registered nurses. What was the job posting appetite like? What was the amount of job postings that were going on? And then what was the mobile and the desktop openings throughout the year for registered nurses? We took both of those tracks and we tracked the entire year. We've got data tracking the whole year. And what we found is very similar to what you mentioned. There was a huge peak in January. We actually hit another peak around the beginning of the first and second quarter. So I want to say it was around also March, April. There was also a big push. So January, February, March, very strong, especially towards the end of March, beginning of April. And then we saw a little bit of a kind of a tail off throughout the year. There were some spikes, but there was quite a bit of tail off throughout the rest of the year. So it's interesting to see how that's shaped up, even on the registered nurse side specifically. We haven't released it yet, but we've been analyzing those numbers, and because we're want to try to get into the, what are the best times of the year to actually get the message out that we need these folks, we need to bring these folks in, versus just recruiting based just on recs. So maybe you can talk to that for a moment. Have you guys looked at any alternative ways of maybe communicating throughout the year on certain positions versus just when you have recs open? Or do you feel like the industry is better served to continue on the rec-based track that we're on now?
Yeah, it's a little bit of that proactive, reactive versus proactive strategy, right? Where I think certainly you have the openings, and we have over 1,400 to 1,500 openings now. And that shifts throughout the year. I mean, we go as high as about 1,800 openings, and so it's going to certainly varies on the needs that we have across the year in our organization. But I think going back to the question, it really boils down to us going about it in a couple ways. One, in strategically outlining our branding and what are those markets we want to broadcast to, a cascading message. We have informational communication that we're launching. It's not about, hey, Rollis, apply to this nursing, med search role. It's really about, hey, Wallace, let's talk about our organization, how you could be a great fit for our organization. We're Forbes, one of the top employers here, in the state. We're, U.S. News recognized on our honor roll. We're, we're on various, high points that we want to, and when it comes to patient ratio. So what are those touch points? If you're a nurse, if you're a clinician, if you're a corporate professional, that overarching message, rather than please apply here and let's talk once you apply. So I think it's both approaching it at a tactical level and then approaching it at a strategic level as well, so that we, it's an umbrella. We're catching people throughout that life cycle, throughout the 12 months. And we may want to talk to you today to understand your career. We might not have that role that you're looking for, but hey, in 3 months, that opening's out there, and let's get you on board, and let's get you, let's get you sped through the process. So that's really what we're looking to do.
I love that. And would you recommend that for across the board or with any healthcare HR professional, that they should have a multifaceted approach of, of course you do the rec base where you put a posting out there for what you need, but then also having a proactive approach throughout the year? What are your thoughts on that overall across all healthcare HR organizations?
Yeah. You're talking about it from an employer standpoint or candidate?
Yeah, other healthcare organizations, other hospital systems, medical practices, all across the board, regardless of size. Is it something that you think all of them should be doing?
Yeah, I think so. I think it also depends on the size and the growth within your organization and what type of roles really are those perpetual needs. We are continuously hiring from the nursing standpoint, and then we're hiring in various different other specialties. But I would say that's probably a good strategy to lay out is okay, let's talk about what are our vacancies today? What are our future vacancies? Where's our projected growth? And then how do we approach that? And then there's strategies that meet the business, whether it's, hiring in advance of those projects, those initiatives, or, looking at the contract side route, where you might not have that, that FTE availability, but you can approach it through a different, capital spend or agency spend, and approach it in that space. So there's a couple ways to go about that, but I think first and foremost, it's kind of laying out the groundwork so that you have a good blueprint to work from, and then certainly that will change, right? You're going to have peaks and valleys. You're going to have spikes in the market. You can have industry changes that throw a wrench into the whole game plan. But having that blueprint in place and then being able to adapt to that, that shift in market will put you on the right course.
I appreciate that. There's a couple of things I want to ask too, from a metric standpoint. What are some things that you look at to know if things are going well, going not so well? What are some numbers that you look at on a regular basis that you guys are able to track that's of value to you?
Yeah, certainly. I certainly, the tried and true numbers around, time to fill and time to start. I think, time to fill, certainly for our standpoint, the time that the recruiter's posting the role to the time the offer is accepted from the candidate standpoint. More telling for the department is the time to start, where it's the time the recruiter posts it to the, to the time that the individual actually starts within the department. So, you have onboarding time, pre-boarding time baked into that, that time frame. And certainly we're working through some metrics that work well for us. I'll be honest with you, we're still working out vacancy time and really from the department standpoint and what that means from a, headcount, FTE perspective. But those are the big ones for us from a TA recruitment standpoint. We put a lot of attention certainly on the overall workforce standpoint from engagement and turnover. So those are big components as well. But we look at those recs. Days open is also another one for open requisitions. as they, evolve, and then we look at different 30-day increments from that standpoint.
Do you have ways? This is something I found is very rare, and I don't know if it's a good way to do this. But is there a good way, metric wise, to identify perhaps if it's a problem with finding the candidates, or is it a problem with once you find the candidates, moving them through the process quickly? Because you have some hiring managers that may move more quickly than others. Maybe some of their interview processes are more efficient than others. Have you seen any effective ways to try and identify where those problem areas, and then maybe if you could talk to what's one way you found that help reduce some of the problem areas, whether it's on the finding side or the actual processing the applicants quickly side?
Yeah, definitely both. But I think one of the things that we talk a lot about is our service level agreement and our intake conversations with our hiring leaders. It's one of those things. The more time you put on the front end, the less time on the back end. So the more we get to know our departments, what are those intricacies look like? What are those behavioral characteristics we're looking for in the right fit for the organization, and then how does that match up then to those department needs, and ideally escalate that cycle, because certainly candidates have options. We have record unemployment rates across the country. Candidates have options at their fingertips. They're connecting with employers across, right down the street. So, from that standpoint, we need to move fast and be efficient in that process as well. And that plays into the, employees, non-employees, certainly employee referrals. That plays a factor from that perspective. So I think it's important for us to visualize it like a candidate, and understand what are their options on the table, and then meet those particular needs.
Yeah, in an area that you're in, like with the Texas Medical Center, I remember I was interviewing with Kelly Spencer, the talent acquisition director at CHI for Texas, and she was mentioning that it's a garage to garage situation where literally it's as easy as a nurse just changing garages, and it's a whole different organization that has 20,000+ employees.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the infrastructure. I was talking to a gentleman, I think in Virginia yesterday. They're a military-owned leadership development organization. Great organization that would probably be great for us to talk to for our chapter, Rawls. But I was explaining to him a little bit about the Texas Medical Center, because certainly it's branded as a large employer, and from that standpoint, but it's really the infrastructure and all the parking, all the energy, all the logistics from that standpoint here within this space. But yeah, that's so true. It's you have great hospitals across the campuses, and I think it puts us in a position where we certainly keep each other sharp.
Yeah, absolutely. So, any thoughts on 2020 and beyond? Like, where do you see healthcare, HR going, just from your own personal perspective? Being in the business as long as you have, what do you see coming this year and the years to come?
Yeah, I think what certainly technology innovation are at the forefront, and I think it comes down to, as organizations, how are we, certainly looking ahead and incorporating those technologies, innovations within our organizations, but at the same time, not looking past the importance of strong process, strong talent that drives that technology forward. So if you have this fantastic device or platform software, but you have a broken process, then it's only going to be as successful as that talent behind the scenes. So I think it's really being able to drive that change management forward. Let's talk about what are those challenges, what it's going to take to make it successful, And then ultimately, let's understand what that looks like. But I think some cases when you see the big shiny object, you want to have that in the door, but there's steps involved. So I think having that understanding is going to be very key.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate that. Now, do you see anything in the near future as we prepare for things like AI? Do you see some cross training or some retraining opportunities, or do you see it more so as something that's just going to accentuate current roles, whatever roles they're in? If you can talk to that for a moment, because I know you've done some things involved with AI so far already.
Yeah. What we've seen just from our direct TA standpoint is it's been very successful in us being able to connect with candidates. So we have night nurses and weekend nurses. From that perspective, that some cases nurses are not the easiest folks to get in contact with, right? They're working various different shifts. They're highly engaged, talent. So we're providing them mechanisms to be able to connect with them at all times of the day. And from that standpoint, it goes back to the conversation we're having about hiring events, the follow-up, so if they engage with our technology, then we're on the back end, we need to be vigilant in connecting with them and then really, putting that opportunity forward with our hiring leadership as well. And so I think going back to your question, really it boils down to, looking at it from the technology side, but then matching up to the human side and getting that visibility to the candidate.
Okay, well, listen, I appreciate it. It's been fantastic today. Spend this time with you. To finish this up, I want to do our this or that. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay. All right, so I don't even want you to think about it. I'm just going to go through a choice of this or that, and then you just pick one, and then we just move on. If you're not sure, just pick one of them. We'll just keep moving, okay? It'll be really fast moving, but it'll be fun. Okay, so would you rather watch a video or read an article?
I would read an article.
Okay, Instagram or Facebook?
Facebook,
LinkedIn or Twitter?
LinkedIn,
Call or text?
text.
WhatsApp or DM?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
WhatsApp or a direct message? The DM?
Oh, WhatsApp.
Email or iMessage?
I am.
Okay, phone or tablet?
Phone.
Netflix or Amazon Prime?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think shifting to Amazon.
Okay. Movie theater or a stream?
Stream.
Google or Bing?
Google.
Indeed or Glassdoor?
Another tough one. They're becoming very similar at Glassdoor.
By the way, I don't know if our viewers know this, but Indeed and Glassdoor are now owned by the same company, so I understand where you're coming from on that. Okay, which I think is smart for them to actually own both. Really quick, Mac or PC?
Mac. Or I'm sorry, PC, actually.
PC. Okay, watch or play sports?
Watch.
Android or Apple?
Apple.
Driving or self-driving cars?
We'll go in the current state, driving.
Okay, rental car or Uber Lyft?
Uber, Lyft.
Okay, drive or fly?
Fly.
TV shows or movies?
Movies.
Hulu or Disney Plus?
Neat, but I'll go with Hulu if you force me to one.
Um, Facebook or Snapchat?
Facebook,
Phone or computer?
phone,
Instagram or TikTok?
neither. But if you force me to one, then Instagram,
YouTube or cable TV?
YouTube,
Okay, last one. Sedan or SUV?
SUV.
All right. Thank you, sir. You did
My
good.
pleasure.
I enjoyed your answers. It's interesting, different people give different answers. We've done nurses, executives, healthcare HR, outside of healthcare HR. It's interesting seeing all the different responses. But I'll tell you, your insight today has been awesome today, Carlos. I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and expertise with us, and we look forward to having you back on the show.
It's been a pleasure. Definitely anytime, happy to do so. And hopefully was able to share some insights. So thanks again for this opportunity.
No problem. And hopefully, anyone who's watching, if you're in the Houston area, you'd like to visit with both of us. We're going to be at towards the end of this month, January 29th. It's coming up really quick. January 29th, we got our member mixer. And if you want to see Carlos speak, one of his speaking conference later on this year in October here in Houston. So we look forward to both those and many more events together. Carlos, it's been a pleasure with you. We're going to have your website below. If you're on LinkedIn, Carlos is easy to find there. So thanks again for watching, everyone, and thank you, Carlos, and have a great day.
Hey, thanks again, Rollis. We appreciate it.